Open world sandbox games are some of my favorite games to play, but there really hasn't been too many in the style of Grand Theft Auto on the Nintendo Switch. Of course, Grand Theft Auto hasn't arrived on the Switch yet for whatever reason, so primarily there's been two games in the genre to check out so far. LEGO City Undercover is the first game, and it's kind of like a Nickelodeon style of Grand Theft Auto, and it's super fun, but maybe not gritty enough for some people. Now, Saints Row 3 came to the Nintendo Switch last year and was more of in that traditional GTA style, but the Switch version of the game definitely suffered from some performance issues that overall hampered the game. Saints Row 4 Re-Elected is now out for the Nintendo Switch though, so is this the GTA clone that Switch owners have been waiting for? Well, maybe. What's up guys, I'm RGT85. If this is your first time on the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button, but without any further ado, let's take a look at Saints Row 4 Re-Elected for the Nintendo Switch and see if this is a game for you. Now, if you've ever played a previous Saints Row game, you would know that you play as a criminal, a mobster, someone of the underworld, and in this game it's no different, but a different type of crime world. You play as the President of the United States. Yes, I'm dead serious. The country is invaded by aliens who overtake things, and you as the President of the United States need to bring an end to their reign of terror. They are led by the head alien named Zinyak, and he traps our main character in a simulation, along with other cabinet members who happen to be members of the Saints Row gang. After you break out of your simulation world, which is a strange 1950s happy world, you then have to stop the invasion on Steel City, which is the city from previous Saints Row games, and you also have to rescue your cabinet members who are also stuck in their own simulations. Now, it does sound a bit confusing at first, and at times the story can be, but if you're a fan of movies, think of a cross between something like Mars Attacks and The Matrix, and you pretty much have the main plot of the game. Now, obviously, this is a very stark contrast to previous Saints Row games, and is very over the top, but that actually plays into the types of areas that you visit in the game. Of course, the bulk of the game takes place in Steel City, which is the previous location from Saints Row games, but there's now also outer space missions as well because, well, you'll understand the more you play the game. Obviously, you have to rescue your friends who are stuck in their own simulations as well, and since these simulations are created by aliens and they are in outer space, there's a great variety of places that you end up visiting. So really, if you're expecting a standard open world game like a previous Saints Row or GTA, you might be a bit confused by the stark contrast that this game offers. Think more of a sci-fi action game in an open world than a standard open world game, and you might sort of get the gist of it. The Mars Attacks connection definitely extends into the humor of the game as well, but it's definitely mixed more with a bit of South Park. The President is a rude and crude individual, which I of course liked because it's lowbrow humor, but be warned that there's some pretty questionable dialogue and events that happen in the game. And of course, in traditional Saints Row fashion, you can also customize the look of your President and make him look like however you want. Now, I know the big question you are asking yourself right now though is, does your President have a mullet? And the answer is a resounding yes, and it's in honor of Joe Exotic. Free Joe Exotic! Gameplay wise, the strange sci-fi story definitely bleeds into how the game plays, and honestly, I like it. It has the standard collectathon missions and gunplay like a GTA game, but the main change in this game is that not only are you the President of the United States, but you're also a superhero because, well, I mean, why not? As you progress through the game, you unlock different abilities and upgrades for those abilities, such as the ability to run fast as hell or jump across huge gaps and soar through the air. This also plays a role in the combat of the game as well, as you gain the ability to do things like freeze enemies, burn enemies, or use telekinesis attacks on them, and a whole lot more. Scattered throughout the levels are these blue things called clusters, and the more clusters you get, the more you can level up all these abilities and even add more abilities. Aside from your superpowers, you still have the standard things to upgrade, such as your crew, your health, and how much ammo you can carry, and so on. You can upgrade those things by simply acquiring money from defeating enemies, doing missions to gain XP, and so on. Mission variety is all over the place in this game, and you never really know what to expect. Since it's an open world game, you can go and explore and do the basic stuff like taking out alien bases scattered throughout Steelport to weaken the alien control over an area, but the story missions are where the game really shines, I feel. I've done stuff from battling alien toilet bowls to taking down waves of aliens in a mech suit to flying a ship while Hadaway's What Is Love blasts on the radio. It's insane how many different types of gameplay they managed to cram into this game, but I think it really works well for making it stand out from more than your standard open world game. Hell, there's even a choose your own adventure style mission in the game that has to have you answer the questions correctly in order to proceed. Of course, as you can see in the footage, there's standard brute force gunplay as well, but I was really surprised with how much the game throws at you and how a good job of it does pretty much making everything work. Gunplay is tight and responsive, switching between your abilities on the fly is pretty easy, movement is mostly smooth, and it's pretty easy to use your superpowers as well. And the Nintendo Switch version of the game does include gyro controls if you're a fan of them that work pretty well. Also, like Saints Row 3 on the Switch, the game allows you to play with local or online co-op as well if you want to team up with a friend and take down the alien race. The biggest issue with Saints Row 3 on the Nintendo Switch was of course in the presentation department. Saints Row 3 suffered from some major slowdown and tons of graphical issues, so I was interested to see how Saints Row 4 would translate on the Switch. Thankfully, Saints Row 4 runs a hell of a lot better, with significantly less technical issues. Graphics are nice and clean, kind of like a Crackdown style, and the frame rate is a massive improvement over its predecessor. There is some minor slowdown when the action gets super hectic, and there's definitely still some pop-up, but it's an open world game that's a bit older, so it is a bit to be expected. There's no load times when you're jumping and dashing around through Steel City though. Enemies are pretty well detailed and feature some really cool battles, and everything just has a generally nice aesthetic to it. The game also looks really good in handheld mode as well, with a slight decrease in visual fidelity, but nothing too crazy. Now let's talk about some of the things I'm not too fond of with Saints Row 4. Since we talked about the presentation, we can start with the music selection of the game. Now this is a pretty minor complaint, but there's like 2 good radio stations in the game, one with rap and one with random 90s songs. I was really surprised with the lack of music variety from this game, and like I said, it's not a huge deal, but I thought I'd mention it. Another thing I want to talk about is your superpowers. I would say a good 90% of the time everything works as you would expect it to, but since you're running and dashing through the city, sometimes you get stuck in some really weird areas. Also, sometimes I felt like your character moves a bit too fast, especially in things like gunfights. Sometimes you'll have to do things like defeat waves of enemies in a certain spot, and running around trying to avoid their bullets or cars flying in at you can kind of feel a bit loose at times, especially the more you upgrade your character. Like I said, there's a ton of missions in the game as well, and while most of them are pretty fun and creative, some of them just aren't. One mission, for instance, has you doing precise platforming, which I just found to be annoying as hell, and some missions honestly feel dragged out and overstay their welcome. Another thing I found weird about the game is the fact that cars are pretty much pointless in this game, even though the game tries to convince you otherwise. You can of course customize your vehicles and hijack cars, but there's really no point as your character moves a lot faster than the cars do. Hell, even the races in the game take place on foot instead of in a vehicle. Saints Row 4 also uses the same version of Steel City from Saints Row 3, albeit with some minor changes, which didn't really bother me, but I did feel like it was worth mentioning. And of course there is the biggest issue that we constantly bring up with these older ports coming to the Nintendo Switch, the price of the game. Now, Saints Row 4 originally came out in 2013, so it's not exactly the new kid on the block. The game also released on the PS4 and the Xbox One, and can often be picked up for about half the price of the Nintendo Switch version of the game, which is $40. Also, aside from having the core Saints Row 4 game, the Switch version does include most of the DLC that the game saw, including 2 additional story plots, but noticeably missing is the Gat Out of Hell DLC that released both individually on other platforms and was in a double bundle that came out on the PS4 and the Xbox One with the standard game. I'm not sure why the Nintendo Switch version of the game doesn't include the Gat Out of Hell DLC, but it is worth mentioning. But is Saints Row 4 the GTA clone that people have been looking for on the Nintendo Switch? Like I said, it's not really a yes or no answer, it's definitely a maybe. Saints Row 4 is a fun as hell game that doesn't take itself too seriously, and the crazy convoluted story will keep you laughing along the way. Although the Switch version of the game is missing some of the DLC, including Gat Out of Hell, you are still getting a ton of content at the $40 price point. The gameplay variety is fun and refreshing in the genre, and considering there aren't many open world style games like this on the Switch, I think it's a good fit for the system. But as far as being a GTA clone, I kinda consider this to be more of a superhero game clone. Think of games like Spider-Man, DC Universe Online, Batman Arkham City. These games I feel like are more in line with Saints Row 4 than a standard GTA game, just because of how the movement is done within the game. So it's kind of an open world sandbox superhero game, more so than just a standard GTA clone. But you know what? I kind of like that. And let's be real, worst case, if you're on the fence about this version of the game, I'm sure it'll be on sale for $30 or less pretty soon, and then I could talk about it on an eShop sale video that I know you guys love. It ain't a perfect game, but it's definitely a fun game, and that can override my minor gripes that I've had with Saints Row 4 Re-elected. Alright, so those are my thoughts on Saints Row 4 Re-elected for the Nintendo Switch. Definitely a very fun game, but I don't really think it's that GTA clone that people have been looking for. I definitely think it's more of a superhero game with something like elements of Spider-Man, DC Universe Online, and the Batman Arkham games, just because of how the movement is done in the game, and I think the footage sort of explains why that is the case. But it's definitely a fun game, and I think it's a game that is definitely worth the $40 price point. I picked it up for 40 bucks and I don't regret it. I could have bought it on the PS4 or the Xbox One, but I do like the handheld aspect of the game. So those are my thoughts on the game. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on the game in the comments section down below. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. I apologize if the editing is a little bit weird in this video or if any of the visuals are a bit weird. I gotta be honest with you guys, this isn't an April Fool's joke. My desktop died yesterday and I was planning on having this video out yesterday, and yeah, my desktop just decided to die. I lost everything on there. It definitely sucks. Like, you know, if this is my biggest problem in life though, it's not that huge of a deal. I do have a laptop with most of my programs on here. I just lost, you know, things like footage and, you know, images that I use. So, you know, we will rebuild. It's not the hugest deal in the world, but bear with me as I'm trying to adjust everything as far as chroma key is concerned and whatnot. But thanks for checking out this video. Like I said, give me your thoughts about it in the comments section down below. Be sure to check out other videos on the channel. Have a happy and safe April Fool's Day if you're watching this on April 1st. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.